just wish I had higher self-esteem. I feel like that would be the answer to a lot of my struggles. False! Self-esteem is not what you're looking for. We'll tell you what you are looking for.
Is it me you're looking for?
Oh, that was the reference. Okay, Mended Light. Alicia, do you remember the 90s? I know you were there.
I was there.
Okay. I remember my mom watched a lot of Oprah, a lot of Phil Donahue, a lot of Dr. Phil. And the words that were thrown around a lot were self-esteem. It was all about self-esteem. And that continues to today. People are just like, I need to have a healthier self-esteem. Is that really the tree we should be barking up?
We now return you to our regularly scheduled program.
So the answer to that question is no. And that's because self-esteem is attached to behaviors and outcomes. But I want to read you an excerpt from one of my favorite books called Good Morning, I Love You. And we go over it in our podcast in our membership site.
Okay.
But
open our minds, Alicia.
She summarizes so well why self-esteem isn't the answer.
Okay.
Self-esteem needs success to prove your self-worth, whereas self-compassion says you're worthy no matter what. Self-esteem is inherently unstable, rising and falling according to our latest success or failure. It is a fair weather friend, supporting us when we're doing well, but abandoning us when something goes awry, and we need support the most. Self-esteem also triggers constant comparison to determine self-worth. And I have all sorts of things to say about comparison.
Okay.
Am I better than you or worse than you? Which erodes cooperation and leads to the idea that in order for someone to win, someone else has to lose. And I would say that creates a scarcity mindset.
Yeah.
And quite often we're not talking about a scarcity mindset when it comes to love and compassion and acceptance. But there absolutely is.
Not that there is scarcity, but that people have that mindset.
Correct.
There's only so much to go around, right?
There's only so much love and understanding and compassion and acceptance to go around.
So if I'm going to be loved, that means somebody else slides down the mountain, right?
Yeah.
Or if somebody else gets love and praise and adulation and acceptance, that means there's not room for me at the table.
And for all those reasons, self-esteem creates a shaky foundation for us to build our life on, while recognizing our innate worth gives us a strong foundation. Okay.
So you said you had some thoughts on comparison. I really want to hear them.
Yeah, so there is a beautiful poem, I don't know. It's called Desiderata, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, which is Latin for something that I don't remember. So, but there's a line in there that says, "Do not compare yourselves to others, because it will cause you to become vain or bitter." Because there will always be those who are greater and lesser than yourself, right? Wow. And so if I'm comparing myself to someone else and I'm like, oh, they line up here and I line up here, that's going to cause me to be vain. And my worth is then attached to how I rank. If I compare myself to someone else and I go, well, they line up here and I line up here, that's going to cause me to be bitter.
Yeah.
And once again, I'm looking for my self-worth compared to those around me.
Wow. Well, that makes me think of a movie, as most things do. I've been on a serious Rocky kick. Listen, when I was growing up, I heard them described as chick flicks for guys. Now, we don't really use the term chick flicks anymore. And also, I think we're a bit more open-minded about anybody can enjoy anything. But the notion of on the surface of it, a very macho, muscular, tough narrative, when it's actually a story about love and tenderness and including self-love.
Yeah.
There's a spin-off series called Creed. And I want to paint the picture for you. So Creed is about the son of Apollo Creed, Rocky's opponent who becomes his best friend and dies in the ring. Here's the catch, though. Adonis, the boy, is Apollo's illegitimate son from an affair outside of his marriage.
Oh, wow.
And Apollo's wife didn't even know that there was a son until this boy's mother passes away, and he's going through the foster care system and being passed around and getting into fights and getting into trouble. And she realizes that my late husband has a son from an affair, and she brings him in and raises him as her own.
That's intense.
It's very intense. So he wants to make a name for himself. He has it in his DNA to be a boxer. He just feels that this is what he wants to do, even though he could be successful at other things. But he doesn't want to claim his father's name. He doesn't want the nepotism to kick in. He wants to make it on his own steam and then reveal to the world once he's accomplished everything. Oh, by the way, I'm Apollo Creed's son.
By the way, side note.
By the way. So he enlists Rocky as his trainer. Rocky's old now. Rocky is dying of cancer. Rocky's wife is dead. His son has moved away. And Rocky at this point is just kind of waiting for death. And he doesn't want to fight. He's not going to do chemo. He's just gonna let himself go. And he connects with this young man. Adonis sees himself as, I'm an illegitimate son. I've never belonged. Right? Even the home that I was raised in was because of the compassion of this woman who has every reason to hate me and what I stand for. Once it comes out that he's Apollo Creed's son before he wants everyone to know, now, speaking of comparison, anytime he fights, people are comparing him to his dad, which is what he didn't want. And he's in this fight. It's the last round. His eye is swollen shut. He can't see. And Rocky wants to stop the fight to keep him safe. And this is what we see.
All right, breathe through your mouth. Deep breaths, kid. Deep.
You are up on the card. You're winning this. You are going to win this. But just keep smart and keep away from me.
He's going to sleep this time. He's going out this round.
I should have stopped this one with your father. I'm stopping this one now.
Don't, okay? Let me finish. I got to prove it.
Prove what?
I'm not a mistake.
Look at me. I never got a chance to thank Apollo for helping me out after Mickey died. But it's nothing compared to what you've done. You taught me how to fight again, and I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna fight this thing. But if I fight, I want you to fight too. I want you to go across this ring and knock that son of a bitch down. Can you do it? Say it.
I'm going to knock that son of a bitch down.
I know you are. You know why? Because you're a Creed, and I love you, kid.
Go on. All right, baby.
Go get him.
I love when he says, don't stop the fight. I got to prove it. And he says, prove what? And he says that I'm not a mistake. There's a lot of pain in that statement that I think a lot of people relate to.
Yeah.
And I got to prove that I'm not a mistake by winning this fight, by seeing this fight through. I got to prove that I'm not a mistake by getting good grades. I got to prove that I'm not some cosmic screw up, that I belong with the human race, that I belong as part of my family, that I belong in this group of friends, that I belong, I got to prove it. I got to earn it.
Everybody has a fill in the blank.
Yeah.
I have to prove that I'm not a mistake by.
And what Rocky's telling him when he says, you're a Creed and I love you, is that he sees his father in him, who he loved, one of his best friends, but also like, you don't have to be worthy by winning this fight to take on your father's name. Mm-hmm. You don't have to be as great a fighter as he was. When Rocky says you're a Creed and I love you, what he's saying is your family. Because that's what Apollo was to Rocky. And I think it's such a beautiful thing. Self-compassion. There's a character on a show that I like it, and he says self-compassion is the most important thing. If others give it to you, it's a blessing. But it's not the most important thing. What's most important is that you give it to yourself. And I think Rocky's telling Adonis, you don't have to prove it. And true to what I was saying in a different video, the moment you stop having to prove it, the more you can enjoy yourself and actually live and get swept up in living. Now here's Adonis. He's had this shift of, I don't have to prove my worth. But he's still surrounded by sports journalists and fans and other people who are going to say, well, you got to earn your legacy as your father's son. And they're going to try and tell him that, even though he's had the shift, they haven't. What do you do with something like that?
And that's something that can happen for any of us, right?
Yeah.
Not just the boxers.
Also the briefs. Sorry.
Because we all have the value system in which we operate our life, right?
Yeah.
And in this example, Creed has shifted his value system, and he's done that through the real love of Rocky, right? And so Rocky sees Creed for who he is. Like, Creed's honest about who he is. Rocky sees him for who he is. He accepts him, and he shows real love. Yeah. He shows unconditional positive regard, right? Yeah. That's the path to real love. And those those people who can do that for us are what I would call the wise men and women in our lives. And sometimes our friends, our family members are the wise men and women, and sometimes they're not, right? Yeah. And sometimes the people we would like to have those close relationships with, sometimes the people we would like real love and acceptance from, aren't in an emotional place to do that, haven't done the hard growth that it takes to get there. Yeah. And sometimes they're still operating on an emotional scarcity mindset. And they're saying, no, you do have to earn your worth by becoming XYZ. Your value is tied to XYZ. Right?
Yeah. And the thing about an emotional scarcity mindset is I think if you actually say, do you really think there's only so much love to go around?
Right.
Most people would say, no, of course.
It's not cognitive. It's not conscious.
And yet we accept these ideas that it has to be earned as if it were scarce.
Right.
Right? As if only the champions and the winners can get it. And it's not true.
Yeah. And so it can be hurtful when people project their untrue, false beliefs onto us. And that's our opportunity to either pick it up if they project it onto us and carry that weight around, or to set it down and say, hey, I'm sorry you feel that way. Yeah. But I don't. That's not my perspective. Mm-hmm. And I've had these conversations with family members and loved ones, and I've said that. That's okay. You can see it that way. That can be your perspective, but that's not my perspective.
Well, and self-compassion gives us the strength that when others don't have kindness, don't have empathy for us, when others treat us with judgment or harshness or reject us or are critical of us, that we don't take that to heart. We've got a shield built up around us, and that shield is the compassion and love that we give ourselves. And in this way, self-love, self-respect, self-compassion, to the point of this video, this is what we need to be seeking, not self-esteem. Because self-esteem, as you said at the top, is based on outcome. It's based on accomplishment. And if you don't accomplish what you were hoping to, or you don't achieve the outcome that you were hoping to, then you feel like a loser. Whereas self-compassion and self-love and self-respect says, I came, I showed up, I gave it everything I had. And to the point of the Rocky films, sometimes he wins and sometimes he loses. But even when he loses, he wins because he's always giving it everything he's got. And if a more skilled opponent beats him, that's okay, because it wasn't about winning the match. It was about leaving with my head held high.
And about being the best version of yourself.
True to the story of Adonis Creed, you talked about him receiving real love from Rocky and that helping him to heal from being orphaned and being in the system and enduring a lot of abuse. It takes a community to heal from trauma. We've got an entire video exploring this very concept, and I think that's what you're doing with the next 10 or 15 minutes of your life.
And remember, self-esteem needs success to prove your self-worth, whereas self-compassion says you are worthy no matter what.
Keep shining, folks. We need your light.